Baltimore Ravens face off with the New York Jets in week number 12. And Aaron Glenn, the Jets head coach, had some truths. He spoke on Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. We talk about that and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. We have 5 days a week plus more here of daily Ravens coverage. And of course, happy Sunday, happy game day. And of course, thank you, whether you're an everyday or a first-time listener, or if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you for all of the support. We're going to dive into some Ravens and Jets talk in this one, obviously. The first part of the show, we will talk about Aaron Glenn, the Jets head coach, talking about some truths about Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. I thought he had some pretty interesting comments. Then in the second part of the show, we'll dive into some Ravens and Jets storylines, go over the offenses and defenses of both teams. Then in the final part of the show, we'll do some more predictions, some more analysis of each team, and more. I want to tell everyone today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's dive into these comments. We'll start off with what Aaron Glenn had to say about Lamar Jackson, because there's been a lot of conversation, obviously, about Lamar and his injury situation and how healthy is he or how not healthy is he. Lamar's obviously good to go in this game. He doesn't have an injury designation, but Aaron Glenn was asked about if Lamar Jackson still looks like himself, and he said, quote, he does. And if he doesn't, he still looks pretty damn good, and talked about how they have to be on their P's and Q's, have to be disciplined. And so, for a lot of these, like for an 80% Lamar Jackson or whatever he's at, I don't know what he's at, is still better than 100% of a lot of other quarterbacks in this league. 80% Lamar Jackson, there are certain areas of his game that, get taken away from and he can't do as well, whether it be running or escaping from pressure or whatnot, especially with the leg. I mean, he's dealing with hamstring, ankle, knee stuff. Like, you got to have some part of your legs working, right? So I think Aaron Glenn is correct here where, at this point, like, people see Lamar not running as much. And again, like, he's not going to run as much as he did under Greg Roman, but I think it's more like, is he taking rushing lanes, this, that, and the other? But I think Aaron Glenn assesses it pretty well, where it's like, look, Lamar is still Lamar, even if he's not quite like peak of his powers 100% Lamar Jackson. And again, like, no one's 100% during the season, but you still have to worry about him in so many different aspects, so many different facets, and defenses still respect him, whether he's a decoy out there, which he's not, obviously. But I'm just saying, like, for example, on that hurricane play, which the Ravens are just tired of talking about, apparently, Mark Andrews, Derrick Henry, everybody's like, all right, calm down with that. But on that play, you can see Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry on the snap. They go out to the left. You have like 2 or 3 Browns defenders follow them, because that is the gravity. Obviously, Derrick Henry has gravity too, but that's the gravity Lamar Jackson brings to the table. So you always have to account for Lamar. That automatically opens things up, whether it's throwing lanes, rushing lanes. And, Lamar didn't have a great game against the Browns. We could all admit that and acknowledge it. And there were a lot of different reasons why, Lamar and, some of the throws weren't great. The offensive line wasn't playing great, which, Lamar, you can't ask any quarterback to play under those circumstances. But I think that it was a really interesting comment from Glenn about, like, look, even if he's not 100%, still looking good out there, still got to be able to respect what he does. And that's essentially the gist of what Aaron Glenn was saying there. So we know Lamar has a lot of respect throughout the league, players, coaches, former coaches, whatever it may be. Obviously, that respect doesn't always translate out to the media, which is unfortunate, but you can tell the amount of pull or respect, if you will, that Lamar Jackson has here. Now, he also had some comments about the Ravens in general, which I thought were really interesting too, because look, we know they started slow. We know it wasn't a great year at the beginning for the Ravens. Now they've obviously pulled it together, and that's what Aaron Glenn said in his comments about the 2025 Ravens. He said, quote, there's a number of teams that look at the Ravens and want to emulate exactly how they go about doing business. And so that's obviously, like, for all of the historical success Baltimore's had, for the consistency they've had of being a contending team and being right in that conversation. He said, quote, it's been consistent throughout. At some point, every team has a lull. But then he talked about, quote, but then some teams go back and remember exactly who they are and start to pick it up as the season progresses. I think this is one of those teams. And I think this is a really cool comment from Aaron Glenn because it does kind of encapsulate Baltimore's season. Is, defensively, this team lost all identity early on here. I mean, it was bad, and we know it was bad, whether it was due to schematics, execution, injuries. There were a lot of different reasons. All of it played a part, and a lot of it was to blame. But, now you have a team that is blitzing a lot more, is a lot more aggressive, is essentially telling offenses, you are going to be the one that is on your back foot, not us. Where earlier in the season, it was, offenses kind of dictated how things went. Now it is Baltimore's defense dictating things here. So the Ravens have remembered who they are now. And obviously, early on in the season, it was the offense putting up a lot of points and the defense giving up a lot of points. Like last week, for example, was the defense holding it down and the offense not being able to put up points. And, it's been different kinds of lulls for different types of units here, all the Ravens units here. But hopefully they can get these units clicking over the next handful of weeks. The Jets are a great opportunity to do that against, but we also know they're not just going to lay down here. This is a team that's 2-8, but they're playing for pride. Young guys are playing for roles, whether it be this year or next year. So there are a lot of things the Jets are playing for in this game, but I think Aaron Glenn summed things up pretty well about the Ravens and the fact that, sometimes when you have like the Ravens being 1-5, I mean, everybody thought, okay, that was it. If they had fallen to 1-6, that probably would have been it, right? But they have started to go back, and it's the opposite of regress, it's progress, right? A lot of teams tend to regress, and we saw that early from Baltimore on defense, but now they are progressing back, being aggressive, blitzing more on defense. And now, we know that this offense with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and all the weapons they have, every week dangerous potential, but they have to be able to execute on that with it, whether it be play calling, execution, the whole 9 yards. So there's a lot to like with Baltimore. Still some areas to improve on all 3 phases of the ball. Certainly not a perfect product yet. They're going to have a tough stretch to end their season against Patriots, Packers, Steelers. So got to pick up your wins where you can. But the fact that you are now 5-5, and you've got a nice little 4-game win streak right now, a lot of that has to do with the fact that they have rallied and come together, which has been really, really, really cool to see overall. So I'm excited for this game against the Jets. And again, if you're listening to this after the Jets game, or maybe you catch it during it, I'm not sure. You can look at all my predictions ahead and all my analysis, see how right or wrong I am or how right or wrong I was, because there's a lot of stuff we're going to have here coming up next on Locked On Ravens. We're going to dive into the Ravens offense, first the Jets defense first. So be sure to stay tuned. We have plenty coming your way here on this game day edition of Locked On Ravens. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I've been using PrizePicks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs. It keeps every game exciting. I like picking my favorite players like Lamar Jackson and Nikola Jokic to see how my predictions play out. And the new stacks feature is a game changer. You can now pick more on Steph Curry's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves my lineup from a loss. Now the PrizePicks app today, use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Moving along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Sunday game day edition of the show. Ravens and Jets, week number 12. Ravens 5-5, Jets 2-8. Appreciate everybody for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Again, 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens covers. We have a bunch of game day content too. We'll have the watch along at 1 p.m. Eastern time with the Jets and Ravens kicking off then. And of course, after the watch along, we'll have the instant reaction show as well as the Locked On Ravens squad show after that with myself, Sam Njoku, and former Raven receiver Kadri Ismail, and the regular main shows, of course, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. Sometimes we have bonus episodes on the weekend when there are headlines. So lots and lots and lots and lots of daily Ravens coverage for you. Now, let's dive into this Ravens and Jets storylines. As promised, we will start with Ravens offense against the Jets defense. And again, Baltimore's offense coming off a pretty putrid effort in week number 11 against Cleveland. Now, luckily for the Ravens, there's no more Myles Garrett. We're done with Myles Garrett. So I'm very thankful and happy about that. But the Ravens offense still, it's a solid unit. We know that it's an explosive unit as well. They're still the second best rush offense in the league. They're middling in the passing department at 16th, so actually smack dab in the middle. But of course, that is with a couple games of Cooper Rush and Tyler Huntley there. But I think for me, where I'm looking for the Ravens to exploit this Jets defense, because they're like middle of the pack to poor on defense. They're the 20th rated rush defense and the 19th rated pass defense. Where I'm looking for the Ravens to do some damage here is the Jets give up a lot of points. They give up a lot of points. So one of the worst scoring defenses in the league, 27th. Also points per drive, they're 28th. So to me, that's really big. Plus, they allow teams to start really deep compared to other teams. Teams on offense on the Jets defense start at their own 32.3 yard line, which is a bottom 5 mark in the NFL. So there are a lot of different ways that the Ravens can do this, where one of the things that we've talked about a lot here recently is red zone. Red zone, red zone, red zone. The Jets are solid in the red zone. They're the 13th rated red zone defense at 58.3%. We all know the Ravens and their red zone offense. That's been a struggle point this season. It's been really bad. They're 47.2% in the red zone, which is 28th in the NFL. They were the number 1 red zone offense in the league last year. So it is a major, major drop off. And, for Tyler Loop, who's been mainly nails for them this season, you want him kicking some more extra points as opposed to field goals in some of these situations. The red zone was a struggle for Baltimore again in week 11. So, teams on offense, like the opposing offenses, we'll get a little bit more to the Jets offense versus Ravens defense coming up. But one of the points that I've made over and over again on this show is that, you look at what opposing offense and their game plan is, and honestly what the Ravens defensive game plan is like they're so confident in a Lamar Jackson-led offense that if they feel like they can limit opposing teams to a kicker upon on every possession, the Ravens defense to opposing offenses, that's an 100% success rate for maybe 99.9 if you don't believe in perfect. But even still, that's something that this Ravens offense has to be able to get better at, because one of the reasons why that is so successful is because, well, we know Lamar Jackson, that offense usually puts up touchdowns in the red zone, but this hasn't been the case. We also know short yardage situations have been poor for Baltimore this season compared to 3rd and longs, for example. Those numbers are a lot better than 3rd and shorts. It goes down in percentage conversion rate the closer you get to the first down marker, which should be the opposite, especially with a team that has Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. But of course, everybody's going to be looking at the offensive line, all right? That's the biggest conversation point here. Everybody knows it. Obviously, it doesn't appear the Ravens are going to make any changes there with John Harbaugh's comments, although I guess the Ravens don't really tell anybody anything before the game. So who knows? Maybe in warmups, there'll be something about a line change. But my prediction is that they're going to stick with these 5, especially while they're winning. I don't think they're going to change anything while they're winning here. But the Jets on defense, they have a couple of guys that can get to the quarterback decently effectively. One being Will McDonald, who leads this team with 7 sacks, former 1st-round pick. He's really come on this season. Jermaine Johnson, only 3 sacks on the season, but, he's a guy that can make stuff happen for them, and he's someone that Will McDonald's probably learned a lot from, if we're being honest. Other sack leaders for them, Quincy Williams at 3, their linebacker, Jawan Briggs, who's taken on a bigger role when Quinnen Williams, his departure, obviously, to Dallas, he's 4th with 2. So not as many sack threats, obviously, on this Jets team. And now with Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner being gone, I mean, look, we know the Brandon Stevens angle as well. He kind of downplayed this week, said he's more focused on just getting his assignments and everything. But, there are plenty of storylines here. I would love to see the Ravens get this run game going early because, it's taken some time in certain spots to get this run game going. I think if they can get the play action game with that run game going, it's going to open up so much. We know Rashod Bateman's not going to play in this game. So guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Tylan Wallace, Tez Walker, hopefully stepping up for this team. There are a lot of different avenues that this team can go with and kind of figure out, how they're going to get the ball. Plus, I'd love to see a big game from Isaiah Likely. I know Likely's struggled during this year to kind of getting a groove and getting a rhythm. A lot of that's because he missed the first part of the season and Lamar was out. Like, it's just been very weird with this offense, especially once Lamar went down. So I'd love to have a big likely game here. Obviously for Mark and Charlie Kohler, that'd be great too, but kind of exploiting that. And that's where the play action game can work. Plus, if the Jets get super aggressive with blitzing, which, it's interesting because I'm going to look at where the Jets are in terms of blitz percentage here. But right now, the Jets defense, they're a decently heavy blitzing team where, you kind of talk about how this team looks, and it's decent. Where Baltimore's number, again, I talked about this, they were like 30th in the NFL for a while, and then they have jumped up into the top 10. They're actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The Ravens are number 10. The Jets are more aggressive than Baltimore blitzing at 27.6%. Now, their hurry numbers and quarterback knockdown numbers are down, and so is their pressure rate. They're actually a bottom 3 pressure rate team in the NFL at 16%. So they're blitzing a lot because their pressure rate is down most likely. And I think the Ravens can really take advantage of that using the short intermediate game, the short passing games, and extension of the run game. So there are so many different areas that Baltimore, I think, can look to here, especially if they don't get pressure on Lamar and they are blitzing. I mean, that's just easy money for Lamar. That's open receiver after open receiver, guys one-on-one. I mean, Zay Flowers versus Brandon Stevens. I think Zay is very highly favored in that matchup. I think, with Brandon Stevens, he's someone that is actually after the first couple of weeks of the year for Baltimore. I mean, he had a pretty good year for the Jets. I mean, we can be honest about it. I know we got the battle of the Ravens fan favorite Titans here between Brandon Stevens and Daniel Falele. I want to see a blitz for Brandon Stevens where he stunts inside on Daniel Falele. I want to see it. I want to see those two face off one snap. But all jokes aside, I think that Baltimore does have the personnel matchup, but you can't fall victim to the trap. That's something the Ravens have had, and they honestly almost did it last week, and they usually honestly lose those games, but they found a way to pull it out, and shout out to the defense for sticking in and hanging around and letting the offense hang around until they finally broke through, but you can't fall into that pattern again. So I think Baltimore's in good shape, but the keys here on offense are going to be converting in the red zone, touchdowns instead of field goals when you get down there, as well as being able to work your run game in, work your play action game into that, and then convert on third down and convert in short yardage situations. Don't get blown off the ball. You be the aggressor. You set the tone. That's what I want to see here from this Ravens offense. Coming up in the final part of the show, though, we will flip the field and talk about the Ravens defense versus that Jets offense and get into some final predictions. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Gametime. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping and checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Gametime, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I love zone deals too. You pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Continuing on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher is still here with you, rounding out this game day edition of the show. Again, be sure you stay tuned for all of our game day content to watch along at 1 p.m. Eastern time, where we react to every single play live. Then we'll have the instant reaction show right after the game, followed by the Locked On Ravens squad show. Myself, Sam Njoku, and former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail. Plus, of course, we'll be back tomorrow after all of that with our regularly scheduled Monday episode. And also, you can follow me on social media at ChaosTrekker34 on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the whole 9 yards. And if you have a friend or a family member who likes the Ravens or wants daily Ravens coverage, be sure to send them our way on Locked On Ravens. We have them covered just like we have you covered here on the show. All right, let's do it. Ravens defense versus Jets offense. Now, Tyrod Taylor is going to be the starter here for the Jets. And as I've said all week, the Ravens just love to face off. Or I guess the Jets love to give the Ravens their starting quarterback when they play as a former Raven, like to present a former Raven to start against them. Joe Flacco was that guy in 2022. Tyrod Taylor now in 2025. They both Super Bowl champions on that 2012, 2013 team. Now, the Jets offense, again, Justin Fields has been a disaster for them, and they definitely needed to make the change. And honestly, I feel like a lot of Ravens fans feel this way. I'm honestly in this boat too, where, Justin Fields, I felt pretty confident in the Ravens stopping Justin Fields. Again, like I said, it's just been a disaster. But Tyrod Taylor's kind of that wild card. It could go really well or it could go really bad. And I kind of don't think there's an in-between there. Like, I'm interested to see. Now, the Jets have a top 3 rushing offense in the NFL in terms of yards per attempt. They have Breece Hall. I don't think they use him a lot, or at least as much as they need to, in my opinion. He's your best player on offense. Now that Garrett Wilson's on injured reserve for a couple more weeks. You got to use them, but the Jets don't seem to do that a lot. They take them off the field on passing downs. So, hey, that's the Ravens' game, because I think that they should use Breece on almost every single down. But the passing offense, again, it's abysmal. They're 30th in the NFL there. It's 6.2 yards per attempt. So we'll see if Tyrod can, change that on the season. Tyrod has thrown, he's completed 43 of 69 passes, for 379 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. 3 games, 1 start for Tyrod. That's a guy that I feel like you really need to take advantage of, especially with the turnovers. 3 interceptions in 3 games. Get yourself a couple turnovers here if you're the Ravens defense. Again, the Ravens defense has really upped the ante in that category and upped the ante in a lot of categories. Like, I'm really impressed with their ability to pressure without blitzing now. You have guys like Travis Jones, Draymond Jones doing that really effectively. That's been a really big thing over the last couple of weeks for them. Obviously, the blitzes are great with Kyle Hamilton and whatnot, sending guys confusing pressures. Like, it's been big, but the last 2 weeks they've been facing off against essentially rookie quarterbacks. It's 3 rookie quarterbacks. JJ McCarthy in the second season, but didn't play all last year. So Tyrod's been around. He's been around the block a little bit. He knows what to look for, and some of these pressure packages a lot more than these rookies. So got to be prepared for him to make some better decisions than we've seen over the past couple of weeks from the quarterbacks the Ravens have been facing. Baltimore's defense, again, I remember I'm sure you remember them too, the days of them just being last and everything, second to last, bottom 5. Well, that is since changed. They are actually trending upwards. They're almost in the middle of the pack with passing defense at 17th, and they are 22nd in rush defense. So again, it's better than where they were. They're actually a top 10 third down defense now, which is really impressive. They're also a top half of the league red zone defense at 15. So they're trending up in a lot of different areas here. Obviously, Roquan Smith's played really well. Hamilton, you have a lot of other, like Chidobe Awuzie's really stepped up. I talked about Draymond Jones and Travis Jones. Trenton Simpson's starting to find a little home for himself, which has been really cool. I mean, there are a lot of guys I could shout out. Alohi Gilman, obviously. The one thing that I have to say in terms of a weakness for this Ravens defense right now, there are a couple, but the one I want to single out is definitely the missed tackling. They do have a missed tackling issue. Alohi Gilman and others are big culprits in that. Got to get ball carriers down. Multiple instances last week, especially on that Jerry Jeudy throw late in the game, where you just, you got to bring the guy down. You can't miss tackles. And the Ravens defense as a whole, I actually don't think they rank very highly statistically in terms of missed tackles, but it's still something that they need to get a handle on, because when you get there, it's not going to be, when you get those big plays and it's because, a guy whiffs and he runs for 30 yards on the field, that's terrible. So Baltimore in the top half of the league in missed tackles. They are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They're 12th. 12th in the league with missed tackles, 65 of them on the year. Ravens actually play, if you want to get this is just for a future reference, and we'll reference this over the course of the next couple of weeks. Top 2 missed tackle defenses in the NFL. Cincinnati Bengals at 126 missed tackles. The Pittsburgh Steelers are number 2 at 93 missed tackles. Got 4 games against those guys coming up. So that'll be a big storyline we'll talk about over the course of those 4 weeks. But for now, and just if you're curious, the Jets are also in the top 10. They are 7th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, it's 75. They're actually tied for 5th technically with the Texans and the Raiders as well with 75. So you're playing a lot of missed tackle defenses here over the next 3 weeks. So if you want to go back to offense, Zay Flowers, Derrick Henry, Keaton Mitchell, Lamar, et cetera, go force some missed tackles out there. That'd be really, really big. So, getting Tyrod Taylor under pressure, forcing him to move outside the pocket. Like, there are a lot of different ways Baltimore can have success. I think stopping Breece Hall is going to be the number one thing, because with Garrett Wilson out, I mean, the Jets receivers, it's A.D. Mitchell, who they got from the Colts in the Sauce Gardner trade, John Mechie, who's a former first-round pick, like, Mason Taylor, who's a tight end, he'll get some usage and involvement, Jeremy Rucker. Like, if you stop Breece Hall, that's their number one threat on offense to me. Don't let him get going. Let anybody else beat you but Breece Hall, right? That, to me, is the strategy here. You eliminate Breece Hall and his impact, you can then kind of pin your ears back and do what you want. But if Breece Hall starts beating you, you have to send that attention over, and that will leave other opportunities and make life easier for those other secondary targets, etc. So that's a big area to me. But I think the Ravens will be okay here. I think they'll win this game. It could be a blowout. I'm not going to predict it to be one, though. I'll probably say the Ravens offense does get back on track in a way, and I'll go something along the lines of 27-16 Ravens in this game. So not overly high scoring, but look, the Jets defense does not present the types of challenges that the Browns defense does, and honestly, not a lot of defenses do. So it should be a bounce back game. I expect Lamar to have a better game. I'm hoping that some of the keys on both offense and defense, there's going to be things that work out. Every week I hope for a Pat Ricard anytime touchdown. So hopefully that's in the cards as well for this Ravens team. But yeah, I'll say 27-16 is my final score prediction. But hey, a win's just like last week, right? A win's a win no matter how pretty, how ugly. All you need is a win in the column, and that is all you can ask for week to week. But that's all I have for you today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. But of course, we'll be back here later today with our live watch along at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then we'll have the instant reaction show reacting to the game. And then the Locked On Ravens squad show, myself, Sam Njoku, and former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail. So thank you again for tuning in. On the way out, be sure to like and subscribe button in video form, follow along and subscribe in audio form. And I will see you right back here later today on Locked On Ravens.